Greetings everyone. Today we're going to explore writing linear equations, but today from a graph. Now you definitely want the note sheet for this as it has the pictures of the graph already printed out. Let's talk about the first set of notes. If I ask you to write a line in slope-intercept form from a graph, you first want to identify the slope from the graph. So you're going to have to count your rise over your run. Second, you want to identify the y-intercept. Where does it begin? Where does it cross the y-axis? Third, once you know those two numbers, you want to substitute the slope and the y-intercept into the formula. Remember that the m goes in front of the x and the b is added or subtracted at the end. Let's try it out with example 1. The first thing we want to count and identify is the slope. Let's write m equals, and let's count our jumps. I'm going to start with this first dot here. My rise is going down 1, 2, 3, 4. I went down 4, so it's negative, over run, going to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right is positive 5. So I have a negative sloping line and my slope is 4/5. Let's talk about B. Where does my graph cross the y-axis? Well, right here at this dot, and that dot is at 1, 2, 3 on the y-axis. So my B value is positive 3. Now, if we're writing in slope-intercept form, that's y equals mx plus b. Our m is always written in front of and multiplied by the x. Our b is always added or subtracted at the end. If it's a positive 3, b stays adding 3. Let's try out this one. Now this one doesn't have dots. You're going to be given a lot of graphs that don't have dots, so you need to find them. So for example, I see a perfect intersection here. I see one here. I see one here, right? There's a lot of options. It just depends on what you see first. So let's count our slope between two dots. I'm going to start here. I'm going to rise 1 and I'm going to run 2. Up and right means it's positive, so rise over run. If you need more help with the counting slope, you do want to jump back to our previous units video. Let's talk about our B. Our beginning, where do I cross the y-axis? Our y-intercept is at positive 1. Let's write our equation. The slope is multiplied and placed in front of the x. The B is added or subtracted to the end. In this case, it's addition because it's a positive 1. Remember at any time, if you need to pause the video to jot things down, make sure you do so. M equals, let's start off with this one. I'm going to start at this dot. I'm going to rise 1. Notice I went down, so it's negative 1. I'm going to run to the right 2, so that's positive 2. B, I'm beginning at positive 1. Let's create our equation. Our slope is written in front of the x. Our b is added or subtracted at the end. Y equals mx plus b. Let's take a look at this one. I only see one dot, so I'm going to go draw a few more. I see that every jump is a perfect intersection. So let's count our slope. From the first dot, I'm going to rise 1 and I'm going to run 1. 1 divided by 1 is 1. Make sure you simplify. B, I'm going to begin at positive 1. I cross the y-axis at positive 1. Let's write our equation. Our slope is written in front of the x, and our b is added or subtracted to the end. Now keep in mind, I technically don't need a 1 in front of the x, right? We know if there's not something written there, it's also a 1. So you could also write it like this. All right, let's take a moment to talk about point-slope form. Remember on this one, it's in the name. We need a point and we need a slope. So the first thing we're going to do, like before, identify the slope from the graph. Okay, count the rise over the run. Next, we're going to identify a point. You can use any point, and it's always x comma y. Any dot. So that means our answers, our equations can look differently. Because what if I use one dot and you use a different one? It's okay. We can use any dot that's on the line. We're then going to substitute the slope and the point into the point-slope formula. Let's take a look at example 5. The first thing I want to do is identify the slope. I see 2 dots here. I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to rise 1, 2. I went up 2. And I'm going to run 1, 2, 3. Run 3. 2/3 doesn't simplify, and it's positive. Point. Here's where you get to choose. Let's say you choose the blue dot. The blue dot exists at negative 2, 2. But you could also choose this green dot. This green dot exists at 1, 4. I'm going to show you 2 equations. You only have to write down 1. Now remember, point-slope form. The y gets something and the x gets something. I'm going to write twice. Okay? Now, no matter what dot you use, the slope is 2/3 and it's written in front of the x, no matter what. Let's say I use the blue dot. If my x says negative 2, I write x plus 2. If my y says positive 2, I write negative 2. Let's look at our green dot. If my x says positive 1, I write negative 1. If my y says positive 4, I write negative 4. Either linear equation works. Let's try this one. First, let's count our slope. I'm going to start here at this dot. Rise negative 1. I went down 1. Run 1, 2, 3. I went to the right 3. Now notice I have a negative slope and my line is decreasing. It's going down. So that makes sense. Let's talk about 2 different dots. You only have to write down 1. If you were to use the blue dot, I would write down negative 1, 3. Please write that dot down. It helps me understand what you're looking at. If you were to choose the green dot, you would write down 2, 2. Let's write our equations. Y equals, fill in those spaces, right? You do have to work on memorizing. It's going to be y plus or minus something and x plus or minus something. No matter which dot you choose, your slope is written in front of the x. If you use the blue dot, my x says negative 1, I write positive 1. My y says positive 3, I write y negative 3. What if I use the green dot? If my x is positive 2, I write x minus 2. If my y is positive 2, I write y minus 2. Either equation works. And technically, believe it or not, look at that graph for a moment. This is a dot. This is a dot. 4 students could each write a different equation and be correct. Let's try this one out. Let's write our slope first. I'm going to start here. Rise 1, 2, 3. Run 1. Up and right is positive. 3 divides by 1. I'm going to use 2 equations again. You pick which one. Let's say you want to use the green dot. The green dot exists at 2, negative 2. The blue dot exists at 3, 1. So let's create our two possible equations. I like to always set them up first. It just makes it easier. You could sit down to our practice and just jot all those little fill in the blanks down and then fill them in. Let's talk about the green dot. If it says my x is positive 2, I write x minus 2. If it says my y is minus 2, I write y plus 2. Point slope form has that special rule. Look at the blue dot. If my x says positive 3, I write negative 3. If my y says positive 1, I write y negative 1. And as always, your slope gets written in front of your x. One more point slope form. Let's count our slope first. If I count starting from this dot down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, negative 6 because I went down. Write 1, 2, positive 2. Hey, this actually divides. Negative 6 divided by positive 2 is negative 3. This time, I want you to practice. If you would pause the video, you pick a dot and you write an equation. I'm going to write 3 possible options. So please pause and try it out. All right, I'm going to write based on color. Let's say I started here. This would be y minus 3 equals negative 3 parentheses x plus 4. Let's say you use the blue dot. That would be y plus 3 equals negative 3 x plus 2. Let's say you saw this intersection in purple. That would be y equals negative 3 x plus 3. There's no y because my y value is 0, so I didn't write plus 0. We do have to talk about special cases. Again, special cases do not require a point slope or a slope-intercept form equation. They require one letter equal to one number. Remember my little cheat? What axis am I slicing? The y-axis. At what number? Negative 2. They're going to be that fast. Let's try another one. What axis am I slicing? The x-axis. At what number? 5. Alrighty, that's it for our lesson today. If you need to, if you didn't get everything jotted down, make sure you pause, rewind, re-listen if needed. As always, check out Google Classroom to see what our task is for today. Let me know if you have any questions, and until next time, have a good one.